Hi, you'll be watching lots of videos with me going over math, but in this video, I'm going to go over how our class will work. I'm going to switch now from my camera to the computer screen so I can show you some things.
There will be a lot of videos like this where you will see me writing on the computer screen, usually going over some math. One important thing is that you should really be taking some notes. You can easily do that using the course outlines that are provided in Canvas or that you can get from the notes packet from the JCCC bookstore. Or you can just take notes in a notebook. But there's a lot of research that shows that actually writing things down is going to help you retain what you need to know. So we're going to go through this class outline to understand how the class works and what the class is about. The first thing you'll see here under course overview is what is this class about? So let's talk a little bit about that. Calculus is really about taking the ideas that you've learned in previous classes like algebra and geometry and making those ideas more dynamic. So that means introducing ideas like motion and change. So we're going to study a lot of ideas that have foundations in those previous math classes that you've taken before. So that's why we do a lot of review content at the beginning. But then we're going to introduce these ideas of motion and change to allow those ideas to become more dynamic, and that's how we get to calculus. So we'll see exactly how that works more throughout this semester, but that's one way to understand what calculus is really about. So for the next part of the course outline, how the course will work, I'm going to switch to Canvas in Student View instead of writing here on the notes outline, but you should continue to take notes using the outline about what I'm talking about as I go through Canvas. I'll pretty much follow the order of the notes outline so you can take notes there. So here I have Canvas. I'm in Student View, so mine has a pink border to let me know that I'm seeing what you would see. You're not going to see that pink border on your view. And if you found this video, you've already found some of it. So you should be in modules and you should already click that first item in the Getting Started module that will unlock everything else in that module. Every module starts with a page like this at the top with important information and a list of things to do for the week. Please take the time to read this page. It tells you what is happening, and then near the bottom it suggests a daily schedule of what you should do each day. Deadlines for a class like this really are pretty much only twice a week, but that doesn't mean you should only be working 2 days a week on the math. There's a suggested daily schedule which gives you a plan for how to approach getting through the material so that by the end of the week you're done with everything ahead of the deadlines. You don't have to necessarily stick to the daily schedule, but it can be a good guide to help you know whether you're on track or whether you need to do a little bit more the next day, just so you don't get behind. You can certainly rearrange the schedule a little bit if you need to work more on the weekends or something like that due to your work schedule, but this will just kind of help you keep on top of the schedule so that you don't get behind each week. Whether you follow the daily schedule or not, it's important that you plan time each day to go through the course content. Sometimes I have students who try to cram all of the work into the weekend or the day something's due or the day before it's due, and those students rarely are successful because they just don't have time to process the information. So please make sure that you're using that daily schedule to help you stay on track. So I'm back here to the Getting Started module. I'm going to go ahead and click this little arrow here to collapse it, and we're going to look at a couple of other weeks. So for the very first week, you actually have two modules. The Getting Started module, which tells you how to set up the course and includes the syllabus and things like that. And then the Week 1 module, which has the math in it. All of the math for Week 1 is actually review material because all of the algebra and geometry that are so foundational for our course. But I'm going to go ahead and look here at the Week 2 module that's just a little bit like most of the weeks are going to be. So as usual, there is a page at the top which unlocks everything else and gives you a suggested daily schedule. And there are links to all of the other things in the module and all of the homework assignments. But if we go back to the module, one thing that I want to point out is that for each of the math content sections, there is a notes, outlines, and videos page. And so we're going to look at this one that's actually in Week 2. and most of them look like this. So there is a copy of the notes outline. This is what is in the notes packet that you can get from the bookstore, or you can download the entire thing and print it yourself. And there's space for you to take notes as you watch the videos. So these go along with the videos. You certainly don't have to take notes on these, but often there are graphs or definitions or theorems on these notes that can help you follow along with the videos so that you don't have to write down quite so much. So you use that notes outline to watch some of the videos and take notes, and notice on each of these it says example 1, example 2, those correspond to what is in the course outline. After you're done watching videos and taking notes, you're going to try some of the homework. And so there are several homework assignments that you're going to have each week, and this is a typical week that shows several of the homework assignments. There is MyLab Math homework, and I'm going to show you some things about making sure you get your MyLab Math online homework set up okay. But for this week there are 3 MyLab Math homework. Sometimes there are only 2. So usually 2 to 3 MyLab Math homework sections, and so you'll do those. After you work on the videos, you can work on those homeworks. And then there's a written checkup, a discussion, and a quiz. I'm going to go back up here to the Getting Started module and talk a little bit more about the MyLab Math assignments. For the very first week, one of the first things that you have to do so that you're not dropped for non-attendance is make sure that you set up your MyLab Math assignments. All of these things that are due January 25th are actually requirements to make sure that you are not dropped for the class for non-attendance. So make sure you do all of those before January 25th at 11:59 p.m. I'm going to click on MyLab Math so that you can understand a little bit about how to set that up. So MyLab Math is online homework, and Pearson is the publisher for that. It's all integrated with Canvas, so to set that up, you're going to just click on Access Pearson and then follow these instructions, or if you're pretty tech savvy, you might be able to just follow the prompts on the page. If you need help getting your MyLab Math account set up, please be sure to reach out to me. I've also posted a link to a help web page that is created by Pearson to help you out with that. One important thing that I want to highlight is that there is a free 14-day trial when you sign up for the MyLab Math assignment, and so I really suggest that you use that until you are sure that you are going to stay in the class. You have to scroll way to the bottom of the page to find the free 14-day trial, but my suggestion is that you go ahead and do that, and then you can go ahead and pay the fee directly to Pearson, or you can enter a code that you've purchased from the JCCC bookstore. And there are a few different kinds of licenses that you can get for MyLab Math. So for most of you, probably the 18 weeks, which would be the cheapest option, is probably sufficient. But if you have questions about the different kinds of license options they have, please reach out and contact me. Alright, so after you have completed the MyLab Math assignments for the week, the next thing that you're probably going to work on each week are the written checkup assignments. I'm going to go back to the modules here, and let's look at the week 1 module where you have your first written checkup assignment that's due. So when you open the written checkup assignment, you'll see that there's a PDF there. This document is also available in the notes packet that you can purchase from the bookstore, or if you printed out the entire notes packet. So this one's near the end of the Unit 1 material. So each written checkup assignment is like a worksheet, and you can see the problems are there and instructions, and sometimes there's a graph perhaps that might ask you some questions about the graph. Each one of these written checkup assignments is 4 pages long, so you can see it says page 1 of 4 there, and the idea is that you either print this out or you download and save it, or if you want you can work on the written checkup on notebook paper. Just make sure that if you do that you number the problems and write down the beginning of the problem and all of your work and the answer, and not just the answer. So the idea is that you write out your work for the written checkup assignment and the justification. The key idea here is that your exams are written exams. So the written checkups are really the place where you can receive feedback and practice for the way you are going to be tested. Once you've submitted your written checkup assignment, I will grade it and give comments and corrections. I'll post an answer key so that you can have some ideas of what the expectations are for your exams. I'm going to show you how, when you finish the written checkup assignment, how you're going to submit that. You're going to click Start Assignment, and then there's a place where you can choose places where you might have a file that you can upload, and you can drag the file there or choose it from your browser. And it asks up here for you to submit the assignment as a PDF with all pages in one file. So not one file for each page, but all the pages in one file. That is because it makes it much faster for me to pull your assignment out, write comments and corrections on it, and then get it back uploaded if it's all in one file, and then that way your pages don't get lost and separated and in with somebody else's files. So I ask that you please try to do that. I'm going to show you in the Getting Started module some instructions for making sure that you can get all of your PDF scanned in one file. So I'm going to leave right here, and we're going to go back to modules. In the Getting Started module, there are some instructions about written work in an online class. And so I ask that you read this document, but I'm just going to go through a couple of highlights here. It explains why we do written work in an online class, mainly because that's how your exams are, and so that you can learn to write math correctly. Then there are some instructions here for how to write and scan the written assignments. So be sure that you write your work neatly, dark enough that it will scan properly. Number the problems, especially if you do those on notebook paper, so that I can find which problem is which. And then you're going to scan the document and make sure all the pages are in one file. Most students use a scanner app on a phone. I have an iPhone and I use TurboScan, which has a free version. It also has a version for Android phones. Adobe has a scanner app called Adobe Scan that's very good, which works on both Android and iPhones. The Notes app on iPhone can also create PDF scans. My suggestion is that you just go into the App Store for your phone and search for a scanner app and find one that's free or inexpensive and that has good reviews. There are a few key things that you want to look for. You want to make sure that the app that you're using will detect the edges of your paper. So for TurboScan, you can see here that I have my paper laid on a contrasting table, and then I'm using my phone to take a picture of that, and the app actually takes 3 pictures and resolves that into a very crisp PDF, and it detects the edges of the paper there. So you don't want just a picture like it shows on the picture of my phone, but you want it actually to be able to detect the edges of the paper. You want to be able to adjust the contrast. So I have 2 images here of scans, and in the first one my handwriting is very light, and so the scan doesn't actually show very well, but once you change the contrast, then you can see the writing better on the PDF. And then you want to be able to make sure that you can add pages to it. So this one has a plus where you can click at the bottom and add a page. There's also some other features. You can save the file, name the file, delete a page and rescan it, and then you can share it and send it to your computer or OneDrive or wherever you store your files, and then you can use that to upload into Canvas. Sometimes students also have an iPad or a tablet, and so some students will download the PDF and write on the screen. That's what I've done here in this handwriting, and that's what I'm doing in this video, is just writing on a screen using an annotation app. So that's perfectly fine as well, and then just save that as a PDF with the annotations and then upload those to Canvas. And again, if you have any questions about how to do this, be sure that you reach out to me. Alright, going back to the modules here, we're going to look at the week 2 module. It's kind of a little bit more typical. The week 1 is a little different because we have the 2 different modules here. But in most modules, after you have the MyLab math assignments, you'll see the written checkup, and then there are usually 2 other assignments after that, a discussion and a quiz. And so both of those have instructions for how to do those, and so those are what you're going to do at the end of each week. Both the quizzes and the discussions and the written checkup are all due on Wednesdays each week at 5 p.m. They are open a little bit beyond that for late submission, so we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the late work policies, but make sure that you make some time to do that. And again, if you follow that suggested daily schedule, that will keep you ahead of time and make sure that you get all of these things done before they're actually due. All right, if you're following along on the outline, the next item is exams and calculators. And so I'm actually going to go here to the syllabus, and we're going to look at a couple of different things here on the syllabus to do with exams and calculators. So the first thing that I want to be sure all of you understand is that for this class, our exams are on-campus exams, and you will take those on campus on specified dates, and those dates were available when you enrolled in the class. There is a one-page PDF. This is also in the notes packet if you get that from the bookstore, or there's also a page in Canvas if you prefer to look at it that way, but this one's a little bit more compact, so I'm going to do it this way for the video. This PDF has all of the graded assignments in it and the dates for that, and so I want to highlight that we have 3 on-campus unit exams. Monday, February 16th is exam 1. Exam 2 is Monday, March 23rd, and exam 3 is Monday, April 13th. And then we have our on-campus final exam Monday, May 11th. And all of those exams are scheduled to start at 6 p.m. The 3 unit exams are 6 to 7:30 p.m. and the final exam is 6 to 7:50 p.m. And those are all in a room on campus. When we get a little bit closer to exam 1, I will put a map and some more information about that exam. But the main thing is that you need to make sure that you have those dates on your schedule and that you're planning to be on campus for those exams. That is how these online math classes are set up, is that the exams are to be taken on campus as scheduled. All right, and so some other things that we mentioned about exams is the calculators. And so I'm gone back to the syllabus here. There is a PDF of the syllabus if you prefer to save or print that out, or all of the syllabus sections are here as pages in Canvas as well. And so the information about calculators is here in course information, and I'm going to scroll down here. You should look through this syllabus in a little bit more detail after I'm done with this video if you haven't already, but I want to go down here and talk about the section that is about calculator at the bottom of the course information section. So it says a graphing calculator may be useful but is not required. Most students do use a graphing calculator though. You are welcome to borrow one for on-campus exams. I have TI-84s. Most students though prefer to use one that they are used to using. So although they may borrow one from me because their battery's dead or whatever, but they usually have one that they have been working with that is like the one they're going to use on the exam. So TI-84 is the model that I have and can loan for exams. You can use any model of calculator as long as it does not have a CAS or computer algebra system. So computer algebra system would be a calculator that can do things like factor x squared minus 9 into x plus 3 times x minus 3 for you, or other kinds of symbolic manipulation like that. So if your calculator has a CAS, computer algebra system, you cannot use that on exams. That's our departmental policy. So you won't be able to use that, so you need to make sure that you do have a calculator that you can use. So TI-84s are my recommendation. We do rent them for $25 a semester. You can see this link to the Math Resource Center webpage that has some information about getting started with that rental process if you're interested in that. So if you have a calculator and you're not sure if it's okay to use, please reach out to me and make sure that you know whether you can use the calculator you have or not. If you're going to get a calculator, my recommendation is a TI-84, and again, you can rent one. A lot of students have those from high school, or you might be able to borrow one from somebody else from high school. Okay, I'm going to go back to the notes that we were taking and write a few more things on the screen. Okay, so at the bottom here, we talked about all the different things about how the course will work, and number 7 says exams and calculators, and I'm going to add one other thing here, number 8, which is something that I found out just recently that I could add to the class, and so I decided to add to the class after I had already sent the notes to be printed, and that is that you will have some individual meetings that are worth part of your grade. So those will be meetings with me, about 15 minutes. You're certainly welcome to schedule longer than that if you want. There will be 3 of them, and they are worth 1% each of your grade, so a total of 3% of your grade. In the past few times I've taught this class, I have felt like there were some students who were really good about reaching out and getting help when they needed it, and some other students who just were perhaps more shy or busy or whatever, but did not reach out. And I really felt like if I could have met with them, I might have been able to help them get on track a little bit better to do better in the class. And so I decided to add this in as part of the grade and incentivize you to make these meetings with me because they're worth a part of your grade. If you choose not to show up for a meeting or schedule a meeting with me, you would just get a 0 on that part of your grade. So it's not going to kill your grade, but it is an incentive, and my hope is that it will help you do better in the class, just to talk about how you're doing, some strategies that you might use to make sure that you're able to do better on next exams or whatever. There'll be some instructions in Canvas about how to schedule those beginning in week 2, and the deadlines for those are usually aligned with the exam. So for example, the deadline for the first one is February 11th, and that's the Wednesday before our first exam. And those meetings can be on Zoom or in person, and you'll be able to schedule at your convenience. And of course, if none of the times that are listed will work for you, you can let me know and we'll find another time that will work for you. So I encourage you to do that. All right, let's look at a couple of other things here on the outline that I will just mention that are in the syllabus. So I do want you to go into Canvas and read the syllabus in Canvas to make sure that you are clear about this information, but I just want to highlight a couple things here in this video. All right, so first of all, late work policies. So the MyLab math homework, those are usually due on Mondays at 5 p.m. And then the other 3 main assignments that you have each week, so the written checkup, the quiz, and the discussion, those are due Wednesdays at 5 p.m. generally. All of those assignments, however, are open through Thursday at 11:59 p.m. for you to submit late. And Canvas will mark those late, but there is no grade penalty for submitting them through Thursday at 11:59 p.m. So that is an automatic grace period for all of these assignments every week that you have things open until Thursday at 11:59 p.m. One thing that I would like to encourage you to remember, though, is that you should not be counting on that every week, and you should not be working toward Thursday as your deadline every week. Because if something comes up and you are aiming for Thursday and then you're behind, you may not be able to get done by Thursday at 11:59 p.m. So please try to aim for Monday or Wednesday, but if you get a little bit behind or are having a little trouble and need some extra help one week, or just have a rough week, you're sick, or something comes up at work, that provides you a little bit of an automatic grace period that you can turn those in with no grade penalty through Thursday at 11:59 p.m. I am also willing to work with you on a limited basis for some short extensions occasionally if you need an extension beyond Thursday at 11:59 p.m. Please just ask me about that. If you're asking me about that more than once or twice a semester, though, we probably need to have a conversation about how you can get on schedule and stay on schedule. One reason is that I post things like answer keys for the written checkups after those have been due and after they've been graded, and I can't post the answer key until everybody that's going to turn it in has already turned that in. And so if you are requesting extensions beyond that Thursday at 11:59 p.m., deadline, then I can't post the answer key until you get yours turned in, and then that means nobody can see the answer key until it's posted. So it holds up other students in the class if you're consistently asking for extensions beyond that Thursday at 11:59 p.m. deadline. But that's just an automatic grace period, just to acknowledge that, life happens sometimes, and I know people get a little bit behind, and so if you can get everything in by Thursday at 11:59, you'll be okay. But again, don't aim for that. Please make sure you're trying to stay ahead of schedule. All right, the next thing on the outline is about missed exam policies. So the big deal idea is that you need to try to plan to take the exam as scheduled on campus. In the syllabus, it does say that you can take one makeup exam, but you'll need to take that with me within 2 days of the exam. And so you'll need to reach out to me to schedule how that's going to happen and when that's going to happen, and make sure that we can get that scheduled. If for some reason you can't get a makeup exam scheduled with me, if you just can't get in to get it taken, the other kind of backstop policy for that is that the final exam can replace one missed exam. So if you can't get that made up, then your final could replace that. So this is not about taking an exam early. There have been a couple students that have already reached out to me that know they're going to be gone and have asked to take an exam early. That's not what this is about. This is about if an exam is scheduled and you haven't already taken it early, what happens if you miss the exam as it's scheduled. All right, the next thing on here says academic honesty expectations. There are some policies in the syllabus, and I do want you to read those, but I'm going to sum them up very simply by just saying don't cheat. You can get help on all of the things that you're doing at home: MyLab Math homeworks, written checkups, quizzes, discussions. Make sure that you're learning from whatever help you get. So when I'm talking about academic honesty expectations, I'm mainly talking about exams. So the exams do not have any additional resources allowed. There are no note sheets, and so you shouldn't be using any cheat sheets. You'll have a calculator available. There is one exam where I do have a few formulas that are provided, but other than that, you're just expected to use what you know in your head. And what I want to say about don't cheat is, first of all, that there are penalties if you are caught cheating, and they will be enforced. But the other thing I want to say about that is that there are many students who pass this class without cheating. So you are no different than them, and you can pass the class without cheating. So you don't need to cheat to pass the class. So just learn the content and then pass the class, and it'll be no problem. So please read the syllabus though about the penalties for cheating, but just make sure that that's not even an issue with you. Okay, a few more things to talk about here. We have weekly study sessions, usually on Mondays from 4:30 to 5:30 in the Math Resource Center, except it says they're Labor Day, but this semester we don't have Labor Day, but we do have Martin Luther King Day as a Monday holiday, and so we will meet on Tuesday of that week. So please try to attend those. That corresponds to a time when you're mostly going to be done with your MyLab Math homework. Maybe you have a few things that you still have some questions about, so that'll be a good time for you to ask questions. And you probably should have gotten a good start on your written checkup assignment, so that's a good time to get feedback on what you've already written and ask questions about that. This is also available on Zoom. So there is a Zoom link in Canvas, and I will post announcements, especially the first few weeks, just as reminders that these help sessions are happening. The other time that I would suggest that you get some help is come see me during my office hours and appointments, and those can be in my office or on Zoom. There are links in Canvas for the office hours and for making an individual appointment with me, which can be in my office on Zoom. So please stop by and get help. You can get help in lots of other places, but part of my job is to make sure that I am available to help you. So please make use of that. I am the one writing your assignments, your exams. I am the one grading your assignments and your exams. So please be sure to use me as a place to get help. Of course, you can get help other places, but I just want to emphasize that getting help from the person that is writing and grading the assignments is a really big advantage. So please make sure that you are doing that. Okay, this last section here that we're going to talk about is really some things about learning math and making sure that you're prepared to do well in this class. So the first thing here, it says math as communication. And so what I want to emphasize here is thinking about math as a language. And you may or may not have ever thought about math that way before, but when you think about math as a language that's used to describe things, then you understand that there are some important things about any language. Things like using the correct syntax and vocabulary, using the correct symbols. You would not use a question mark when you mean an exclamation mark. And so the same thing in math, you're going to use the correct symbols to convey the appropriate meaning. And the other part of that is that just like when you're communicating anything, like if you're writing a paper for your composition class or giving a speech in a public speaking class, you have to be able to justify what your claims are. And so that's important in math as well. Sometimes in math that might be showing your work, sometimes it might be writing sentences to justify claims, but all of those ideas are important when you think about math as a language. This next part here is a quote that I heard somewhere that I really liked: an attitude of laying claim to one's personal charge for learning. All right, so the basic idea there is that in any class, but especially in an online class, you are the one that is responsible for making sure that you learn. In an online class, I can't tell when the students are confused. In an on-campus class, I can look at their faces and I can see confusion on their faces. But in an online class, I can't see that. So make sure that if you are confused, you take ownership of that and do something about it. So come see me, get some help. We also have the Math Resource Center. We have other places that you can get help. But again, please come see me. I have many ways that I'm available to help you. The next one says productive struggle and brain growth. And so the analogy here is just thinking about any time you are doing something like training for a physical event, trying to get fit, trying to run a race, or even just do something like learn how to do a handstand or dunk a basketball, that you're going to train and you're going to do some conditioning to help you get there. And so some of that's not always comfortable. Sometimes it's a little bit of a struggle, but the important part is that it is productive struggle. And so the idea is that it's not too little that doesn't help you get stronger, but it's not too much to the point where you're overwhelmed and you feel like you can't even do it at all. A productive amount of struggle. So the key thing there is to make sure that you're not struggling too much alone. If you are struggling too much alone, make sure that you're reaching out to get help. But there is research that shows that not only how struggle helps your muscles grow, but struggle also helps the dendrites in your brain grow. And so that can sometimes be uncomfortable for students to feel like they're struggling a little bit. But just understand that that is just like any kind of conditioning and that is helping your brain grow. The next one says using homework to learn. The key thing here is that it is very easy to get answers to MyMathLab homework or other homework, to get answers and not understand what you're doing or what you're writing down. And so make sure that whatever you're using to get help, whether that is me, whether that is the help features in MyMathLab, whether that is a tutor or friend or even AI, that you're making sure that you use that to learn. If you are using AI to help you or the internet, make sure that you're telling the AI that it needs to be helping you learn. So it should be acting like a tutor to you and not just giving you answers. Make sure that you write down what it says and pay attention to the help and the explanations that it's giving you. The assignments are worth a small enough % of your grade that if you're not using them to actually help you learn, you are probably not going to pass the class because your scores on exams are going to be too low. So be sure that you're writing down explanations and making sure that you're learning. All right, what do students struggle with in this class? Two things. In an online class, sometimes students struggle too much alone. And sometimes I'll have students tell me that they spent 5 hours on a problem, and that shouldn't be happening. If you have tried a problem a couple of times and looked at some help features and you're still not getting it, it is time to get help. So reach out to me, reach out to other students, reach out to the tutors in the Math Resource Center, but make sure you're not struggling too much alone. There are plenty of places to get help, so do that. But again, be sure that you're using that to learn. All right, the other thing that students struggle with in this class is time. Occasionally I have students who wait until the weekend or the day before something's due and they try to cram it all in and they don't learn the content very well. So my advice about that is to make sure that you start early in the week, and that'll allow you time that if you are struggling that you can get help with something, and to make sure that whatever it is that your schedule is going to be, that you plan a time to work on materials for this class. So don't think that you're just going to work on it whenever you have time in between other things, because that is not going to be enough. Speaking of time, the last item on here says how much time should you be spending? That's really a highly variable question depending on a lot of individual characteristics that you might have. One of them being how much math you remember from your previous math classes. So some students will remember most everything they learned, and some students will have forgotten a lot. Another thing is how well you retain new information when you learn new information. And another factor is how well you want to do in the class. Sometimes people are just aiming to get by with a C, and sometimes other students really want to get an A. And so that's all very highly variable, and it's really individualized about how much time you should be spending. But in general, most of you should probably expect to be able to spend 15 hours a week on this class. It's a 5 credit hour class, and so kind of the general rule of thumb is about 3 hours of study time for each credit hour, especially in a STEM field class. So some of you, 15 hours may not be enough. If you have forgotten a lot of math from prior math classes and you struggle to retain new information, 15 hours may not be enough. You might have to spend more. For some of you that retain things pretty well and remember a lot of your prior math, perhaps 15 hours will be more than enough for you to do well in this class. But please just, again, make sure that you have planned some time to study. So again, 15 hours is not time you're going to find just between other things that you have scheduled for the week. So make sure that you have a plan, and those daily schedules can help keep you stay on track for that. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me about any of this stuff. But the next things that you should do are here at the bottom. Go back to that Getting Started module in Canvas, read the documents in there, including the syllabus, and do those assignments. And then go on to the week 1 prerequisite review, which is where the math is for the week.